Report with Areva Martin.
We found that, so often people say, oh, I've just got bad genes. There's nothing I can do about it. Even President Clinton, you mentioned, I've been advising him since 1993. And 14 years ago, when his bypasses clogged up, one of his cardiologists held a press conference and said, oh, it was all in his genes, his diet and lifestyle had nothing to do with it. And having worked with him for so many years, I knew it had everything to do with it. So I sent him a note and said, it's not all in your genes. If it were all in your genes, you'd be a victim. You're not a victim. You're one of the most powerful guys in the world. And if you're willing to change your lifestyle, you can actually turn on the genes that keep you healthy and turn off the ones that cause you to get sick. And so he began doing that. He's talked publicly about this, or I wouldn't be mentioning it. And he's getting better and better over time. We did a study with Elizabeth Blackburn, who got the Nobel Prize for discovering what are called telomeres. And they're the ends of our chromosomes that regulate how long we live. And as our DNA replicates, the telomeres tend to get shorter. And as our telomeres get shorter, our lives get shorter, and the risk of premature death from a wide variety of chronic diseases goes up proportionate to that. It had already been shown in other studies that women who were under chronic stress because they were taking care of kids with autism, or people who smoked or who ate junk food or who were sedentary, their telomeres got shorter faster. In fact, they compared high stress and low stress women, and they found that it was a 9 to 17 year shortening of their lifespan in the women who are high stressed. But the stress isn't just from what we do, it's how we react to what you do. And so you could have two women who are in very similar life situations, but one of them was meditating, they were eating well, they were moving more, they were stressing less, and so on. You can control what happens. Even if you can't control the environment you're in, we have a lot more control over how we react to it. So I had lunch with Dr. Blackburn. I said, if bad things make your telomeres shorter, maybe good things make them longer. And we found, sure enough, we could actually lengthen telomeres. And when we published this in the Lancet, the premier international medical journal, they called it reversing aging at a cellular level. And we're now in the midst of doing the first randomized trial to see whether or not these same lifestyle changes may stop or even perhaps reverse the progression of men and women who have early stage Alzheimer's disease. By the way, if anyone's watching this, we're still recruiting the last batch of patients. So if you have early stage Alzheimer's or know someone who does, go to our website, ornish.com, and find out more information. So I was wondering, why is it that these same simple lifestyle changes could reverse and help prevent so many different diseases? It wasn't like there was one set of diet and lifestyle changes for heart disease, a different one for prostate cancer, and so on. It was the same for all of these. And I realized that even though I was trained, like most doctors, to view heart disease and type 2 diabetes and prostate cancer and high blood pressure and breast cancer and so on as being fundamentally different diseases, different diagnoses, and different treatments, I've really come to see that in many respects, they have more in common than they have different. They're in many ways the same disease manifesting and masquerading in different forms because they all share the same underlying biological mechanisms, which in turn are directly influenced by what we eat, how we respond to stress, how much exercise we get, and how much love and support we have. And so it radically simplifies what we recommend people to do.
So, Dr. Ornish, you said a lot, and thank you for giving us a great overview and helping us understand that, it's not just our genes, it's how we live our lives. So that gives us power, that makes us feel empowered. We don't feel like we're just, as you told President Clinton, a victim. But there's so much contradictory information out there, Dr. Ornish. You pick up a newspaper, you turn on your computer, there's always someone pushing a new diet, a new exercise. We were talking in our pre-production meeting about the keto diet. Is that healthy? Is it not healthy? One of the producers says, well, keto is good because it's low carb. And another producer says, well, it's also very high in fat. So, those of us who are trying to be healthy, want to follow the science, want to do the things that you talked about, how do we know what's real versus what's fake?
It's such a good question. And that's why I've spent so much of my time, 44 years, doing research, because, the whole point of research in science is to sort out what's true, what's real, what isn't real, what works, what doesn't, for whom and under what circumstances. And, in the political world, we're seeing, all this just fake news and so on. But there's a lot of that, unfortunately, in the area of diet and nutrition as well. And what sets my work apart from most others is that it's based on science. We've published in all the leading peer-reviewed medical journals, the Journal of the American Medical Association, the Lancet, the New England Journal of Medicine, the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, et cetera. It's hard to do these studies. It's hard to get them published. It's hard to get them funded. But I believe in the power of science to help people sort out what's real and what isn't. And, the keto diet, I think, is a good example. It's just another incarnation of the paleo diet or the Atkins diet. I debated Dr. Atkins many times before he died, and his autopsy showed actually that he died from heart disease, is that they're based on a half-truth. And the half-truth goes something like this. Most Americans eat way too much sugar and what are called bad carbs, sugar, white flour, white rice, things like that. And so we agree on that. But it's what you replace them with that we have a difference, because, replacing them with pork rinds and bacon and sausage and foods, high animal protein, high meat, high, just really bad food for you is not a good thing to do. If you replace them with good carbs, fruits and vegetables and whole grains and legumes and soy products, you're not only not increasing your risk, there are literally hundreds of thousands of protective substances in fruits and vegetables that have anti-cancer, anti-heart disease, anti-aging properties. And one of the things I've been so impressed by over the years is, and by the way, for example, the reason why refined carbs are bad for you is that if you eat a lot of sugar or white flour or white rice, it goes right into your bloodstream because it's the fiber that slows the rate of absorption. So you eat a lot of sugar, your blood sugar spikes, it gets really high. Your pancreas senses that and it produces insulin to bring your blood sugar back down. But the insulin also causes chronic inflammation and other things that can cause chronic diseases over and over again. But when you go from when you have whole grains, white, brown rice, whole wheat flour, things like that, the fiber slows the rate of absorption. So you don't get those rapid swings in blood sugar. You're just in a constant level that doesn't go high enough. And you're not getting the animal protein and the saturated fat and other things that increase your risk of heart disease, diabetes, prostate, breast, colon cancer, and so on. And you're actually getting hundreds of thousands of other substances that help protect you. And so there's really a convergence, I think, among most thoughtful people in this field that a really healthy diet is, mostly fruits and vegetables, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, soy products, low in, red meat, low in junk food like, donuts and high sugar foods and high fructose corn syrup and so on. And also, again, it's not just the diet, but the exercise, the meditation, and the love and support play an important role as well.
Let me start with the diet. Let me go back to that because what you just described, that you said most experts or thoughtful experts in this field agree on, is kind of the basic diet that we get taught in elementary school. Eat our fruits and vegetables, eat our whole grains, don't drink a lot of sweet, juices or soda or other things that are full of sugar. But it seemed like over time, though, those basics about fruits and vegetables and whole grains, has been eclipsed by these, fancy diets that say no carbs or, low fat. So is it just that we just should get back to basics, eat a lot of fruits, eat a lot of vegetables, eat whole grains, reduce our sugar intake, drink a lot of water? I mean, that's kind of the basic stuff we were all taught. I'm thinking I was taught that in elementary school.
Yeah, it's true. There are a lot of, there are billions and billions of dollars in food companies trying to get you to eat processed, unhealthy foods. I remember in 1999, I consulted with the CEO of McDonald's at the time, and people thought, oh my God, he's gone over to the dark side, but I thought, well, they've got 43 million customers a day, a lot of food deserts and in lower socioeconomic groups. The only thing they have are fast food restaurants there. So I thought if we could, get some good things on the menu, at least it might have some incremental benefit. And I told the CEO, I said, look, you're going to be the next big tobacco. You've got nothing but unhealthy foods. Why don't you have some salads on the menu? So I work with them. We've developed these amazing salads and they were really good. But because of the perverse incentives in the agriculture bill, the junk food gets subsidized and the healthy food is not. The salad ended up being $5.95 and the burger was 99 cents. So if you're on a fixed income, you get a lot more calories for your buck by eating junk food, which is not only subsidized, but it doesn't really price in the real cost of society. But, this is essentially a third world diet. This is the way people ate before they could eat, afford to eat a lot of processed foods and high animal protein foods. It's a much easier and less expensive way to eat. It's also, what's good for you is good for the planet. It's personally sustainable is globally sustainable. It turns out that more, it's like easy to say like, oh my God, you mentioned as we were warming up, you listen to the news a lot. It's so easy to get so depressed and say, oh, what can I do as one person about global warming and feeding the hungry and the deforestation of the Amazon and all these beings, 13 billion animals that get killed every year. What can I do as one person? Well, it turns out that something as primal as what we eat every day affects all of those things. More global warming is caused by livestock consumption than all forms of transportation combined. It takes 14 times more resources to make a pound of meat-based protein than plant-based protein. There's enough. No one really need go hungry. I went on the board of directors of the San Francisco Food Bank years ago when I learned that 1 out of 5 children in the Bay Area goes to bed hungry. That's just not acceptable. But, if more people ate towards a plant-based diet, it frees up a lot of resources that, we can use to feed the hungry. it turns out that the deforestation in the Amazon is mostly to clear cut trees for cattle grazing.
Yeah.
And 13 billion sentient, beings, livestock and so on, end up, their whole lives in these little pens and horrible conditions, and then they get killed. And if that's all you have, then, we have to eat, to survive. But with so many other fruits and vegetables and delicious things we can eat, I find it makes it meaningful for people now.
Let's talk about meat, because you mentioned livestock. You've talked about plant-based diet, and I stopped eating meat about 7 years ago, became vegetarian. And people ask me, what changes did I see? I did it because a cousin of mine challenged me. I'm a runner, and she said that she started, she became a vegetarian so that it could help her run. With her runs. So I came back to LA. I was in DC when she told me this. I came back to LA and I just said, I'm gonna stop eating meat. My family thought, oh, that'll last a week and then you'll be back to your burgers and your bacon. But here I am 7 years later. I haven't had a piece of meat, an ounce of meat in 7 years. And I don't know if it helped me run better. I never felt some big dramatic change in my body because I stopped eating meat. I imagine that internally it's been really good for me. Now, my husband recently was diagnosed with high cholesterol, and his doctor told him, you should go to a meatless Monday, reduce your meat intake. And my husband's one of these A-type personalities. So rather than meatless Monday, he came home and declared he was going to become not just vegetarian, but vegan. So now he's been following a completely plant-based vegan diet for the last almost 2 months now. And his numbers have changed dramatically. I mean, he saw an instant change in his cholesterol. But help us with this debate, vegetarian versus vegan. I'm sticking to being a vegetarian. I'm not going to be a vegan unless you tell me on this show that I should and give me scientific reason as to why I should, because I'm a logical person. But is there any biological differences in eating a vegetarian versus a vegan diet?
Well, first, you look marvelous. So I think whatever you're doing is great.
Thank you.
Your husband as well. And the fact that his numbers improved so quickly, I think is just a perfect example of what we're talking about, how dynamic these biological mechanisms are. You can get better quickly, you can get worse quickly for that matter. There's a wonderful documentary that you might have seen called The Game Changers. Have you seen that?
I have not.
Oh, I highly recommend it. It was done by James Cameron, the legendary director of, Avatar and Terminator and all those amazing movies. He went on a plant-based diet, he and his wife, Susie, about 14 years ago, mainly for environmental reasons that we talked about earlier, because he's an explorer as well as a filmmaker. And when he learned that, for example, that as we talked about, that more global warming is caused by livestock consumption, he went on a plant-based diet. He's in his mid-60s like I am, and he's now making avatars 2, 3, and 4 at the same time. He's got so much energy. But one of the films he made, along with Luis Hoyos, an Academy Award-winning documentary producer, he did The Cove, for example, is this amazing documentary called The Game Changers. It's over 100 million people have seen it. It's the most downloaded documentary in both iTunes and Netflix history. It's amazing. And basically, they looked at all these athletes who were, elite athletes, and they went on a plant-based diet, and they all elevated their game, like you're talking about. They became, Dotsie Bausch became an Olympic cyclist medalist in the Olympics at the age of 39, which is pretty old for that. It's a really demanding sport. James Wilkes became the mixed martial artist national champion. The Tennessee Titans won their first Super Bowl. Tom Brady, is legendary for eating a nearly a plant-based diet. And there's this one scene, though, I have to tell you, where they got these three athletes, these three guys in their mid-20s, and they went to the urologist named Aaron Spitz, and they gave them a single meat-based meal, and then they measured the frequency of heart and hardness of erections they got when they slept at night, because guys have erections, it's a normal function. And they did the same thing the next night. They gave them a single, I think it was a Beyond Meat plant-based meal, and they measured them again, just one meal. Mm-hmm. And they found all three guys had 300 to 500% more frequent erections and 10 to 15% harder erections after the single plant-based meal than the meat-based meal. It just shows you how, in fact, the film crew went on a vegan diet after they shot that scene, because first of all, it shows you how quickly you can feel better in ways that really matter. 40% of guys in their 40s have erectile dysfunction, 50% of guys in their 50s, 60% in their 60s, and so on. But, your brain gets more blood. You think more clearly. You can grow so many new brain cells through a process called neurogenesis. Your brain can literally get bigger in just a few months, particularly the parts of your brain that you want to get bigger, like the hippocampus that controls memory. Your skin gets more blood flow. So you look a lot younger. Your heart gets more blood flow. The chest pain goes away. We can measure improved blood flow. The heart disease reverses in just a few weeks. And your sexual organs get more blood flow as well. And so what I've learned is that fear is not really a very sustainable motivator. For a month or so after someone's had a scare, a heart attack or whatever, or being diagnosed with high cholesterol like your husband, they'll do pretty much anything, but it's hard to sustain that. What's sustainable is not fear of dying, but joy of living. That when you make big changes in your lifestyle, you generally do feel so much better so quickly. And the worse you felt to begin with, the more dramatic the improvements are. For someone who's got heart disease and can't, make love with their spouse or play with their kids or walk across the street without getting chest pain or go back to work without pain, and within a few weeks they can do all those things, then they generally go, yeah, I like eating junk food, but not that much, because what I gain is so much more than what I give up. Now, whether it's vegan or vegetarian, I don't think it really matters that much. There's more and more evidence coming out that animal protein itself, beyond this whole fat versus carbs debate, the animal protein itself may be harmful. But, the perfect is the enemy of the good. If you're vegetarian and you don't have a life-threatening condition, God bless you, more power to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll keep drinking. It's the milk that I don't want to give up, but okay. I'll just be honest.
Have you tried the some of the soy milks? They're really pretty good these days.
I know.
The low sugar ones. And I have to say that dairy is probably not the best thing for most people. You might try it for a couple of weeks. Try substituting, like a low sugar soy milk or even an almond milk. The soy milk has a lot more protein. See if you feel any different. And if not, then go back to what you're doing.
Okay. So, but while we're on this, so, they market a ton of products for vegetarians and vegans, many of which are highly processed foods. Like I won't eat, I just eat a really simple, eat vegetables, eat fruit, eat fish, don't eat meat. Like that's my vegetarian diet. My husband, though, is now buying all of these, sausage, all these things that look like meat, but they're really not meat because they're plant-based. I don't know. I just feel like that stuff may be so processed that it's defeating the purpose of being vegan in the first place.
Well, they're good transition foods. If you're a meat eater, I grew up in Texas eating meat, 3 times a day. I've been vegetarian since I was 19. But for a lot of people, it's those plant-based meats are a good transition food. Are they as healthy as eating, broccoli and brown rice? No, but are they better than what they were eating before? Yes. And hopefully they can then help them move more and more into that direction as they start to feel better. Then they want to do more, and it comes out of their own experience, and it takes them out of this whole diet wars. Do I believe this expert or that expert? It's like, oh, when I do this, I feel good. When I eat that way, I don't feel so good. Let me do more of this and less of that. And so again, what you're talking about, the less processed, I think, the better. But again, the perfect is the enemy of good. You meet people where they are and then move them in that direction. Absolutely.
Before we move on to exercise, I got to ask you about fish, because there are people who are saying, oh my God, fish is horrible for you. Help us understand, where does fish fit into all of this?
Yeah, fish is better than chicken, and chicken is better than meat. And eating a plant-based diet is better than eating fish. The omega-3 fatty acids that you find in fish oil really come from algae. You can buy algae. It's because the fish eat the algae and concentrate it, but you can get algae-based omega-3 supplements. That's what I take. Most fish these days, it's really hard to find any clean fish. Most fish are contaminated with dioxin and PCBs and mercury and things like that. Some fish, the bigger the fish, the more mercury they're going to have, because it tends to get, the big fish eat the little fish, and so they get concentrated as you go up. So things like tuna, which are really big, have a lot more mercury than something like salmon, which are smaller. So if you eat those on occasion, it's not a big deal. Even healthier, though, is to not eat them at all. And there was a study that showed, for example, that looked at frontline COVID healthcare workers. These are, doctors and nurses who get exposed to COVID all the time because they're taking care of patients who've got it. And this study just came out about 6 weeks ago, which I thought was really interesting. They looked at almost 3,000 of them in 6 different countries, including the US. They had extensive exposure to COVID. Those following a plant-based diet, a healthy, vegetarian or vegan diet, were 73% less likely to develop moderate to severe COVID. Those following a pescatarian diet, which is what you're on, basically a fishitarian diet, were 59% less likely. But those following an Atkins, high animal protein, low carb, paleo, keto, Atkins type diet were 400% more likely to develop moderate to severe COVID. And I think that's really important. There was another study that came out also from the Harvard School of Public Health, where they looked at almost 600,000 people, also just about a month or two ago. And they found again that those following a healthy plant-based diet were 41% less likely to develop moderate to severe COVID. And I think with the Omicron variant, that's especially important because, even if you're triple vaccinated, there's still a number of people who get breakthrough infections, not as severe, but still, we want to do everything we can to enhance our immune function. And this is one way to do it.
Yeah, I got to ask you about exercise because, again, a lot of contradictory information about what kind of exercise, how often, how rigorous the exercise should be. But for those people who say, look, I've been eating meat and potatoes all my life, I feel great, I'm vibrant, I'm active, and this is kind of, California tree hugging conversation. What do you say to those people?
Well, I grew up in Texas eating meat 3 times a day. I know, what meat is like, and I liked it. But to me, there's no point in giving up something that I enjoy unless I get something back that's better and quickly. And I feel so much better in all the ways that really matter. Some we've talked about already. But the best thing is just to go from your own experience. You don't have to take my word for it. Again, I'd watch the Game Changers film. It's really good. But also, there is a growing consensus about what constitutes a healthy way of eating. And virtually all studies have shown that when you eat a lot of red meat, it increases your risk of a heart attack, of a stroke, of colon cancer, prostate cancer, breast cancer. Not everybody that eats that way is going to get it, but a third of people first find out they have heart disease when they die from it, which is not a good way to find out. And so, again, it's not all or nothing. If you're just trying to lose a few pounds, get your cholesterol or blood pressure or weight down, what matters most is your overall way of eating and living. If you indulge yourself one day, eat healthier the next. You don't have time to exercise one day, do a little more the next. You don't have time to meditate for an hour, do it for a minute. Whatever you do, there's a corresponding benefit. The Undo It book is really about reversing disease. It's, as I mentioned, it's ounce of prevention, pound of cure. And the reason we were the first to show we could reverse so many different chronic diseases is that it's hard. You have to make really big changes to reverse disease, but try it yourself and you'll see.
What are some of those things, talking about reversing disease, that can help you reverse a chronic disease like heart condition?
It's the same, the Undo It book puts forth this new, what I call unifying theory. And as why is it that these same lifestyle changes can affect so many different diseases? I was taught, like all doctors, to view different diseases, different diagnoses, different treatments. And yet we found over these 40 years that these same lifestyle changes could affect so many of these different diseases. And I realized it's because they're really not so different from each other. It's why you often find the same person will have multiple diseases. They'll often have heart disease and high blood pressure and high cholesterol and be overweight and have type 2 diabetes, or entire cultures. In China 50 years ago, they had very low rates of all these conditions, and they started to eat like us and live like us, and now all too often die like us. These are things that can be changed.
So you have convinced me, Dr. Ornish, that I'm not going to commit to giving up fish altogether, but I'm going to start waning myself, maybe like 2 days a week or 3 days a week, like people do with meat, like they tell people who are trying to give up meat, have meatless Mondays.
Exactly.
So I don't have fish with every meal. I probably only have it about 5 times a week, maybe 7 or so.
Yeah.
But I can reduce it, right? I can start.
Well, that's what, it's not all or nothing. And, I found there are 2 basic strategies that work to make sustainable lifestyle changes. The first is small, gradual changes like you're talking about. The other, surprisingly, is really big, rapid changes and a lot of things at the same time, which is really counterintuitive. It's like, wow, it's hard enough to make small changes. How am I going to make big ones? But when you make big changes and a lot of things at the same time, eat well, move more, stress less, love more, you feel the benefits so quickly because these mechanisms are so dynamic, and especially if you've got heart disease and your chest pain goes away within a few days to a few weeks, and you go, well, I like doing these things, but boy, I feel so much better. These are changes worth making, not because I'm going to live longer, but because I'm going to live better. Right. And you asked, for example, about exercise. Yeah, there are lots of different ways of exercising, but I found the best exercise is the one that you like. If you like it, you'll do it, So, I grew up in Texas, and for me, running was always punishment, go take a lap, or give me 50 push-ups or whatever. But, swimming was always fun. And so I moved into a house that had a pool a year and a half ago. And so I swim every morning, and it doesn't feel like exercise. It just feels like fun. So if it's fun, then I'll do it. I used to get, when I drive to the gym, I'd get annoyed when I couldn't find a parking place near the gym. I thought, well, this is ridiculous, so I deliberately parked farther away just to get a little extra exercise or build it into my daily routine, take the stairs, or park a little farther away, which also reduces your stress level. Anything you can do to make the right choice, the easy choice, makes it much more sustainable.
Yeah, there's an article I was reading this morning in New York Times about heart healthy things, or 7 things you can do, I think was the title of the article, to improve your heart health. And one was, of course, exercise. And there was this, again, debate about, do you need 30 minutes of cardiovascular exercise every day, or can you do these, there's these 7-minute workouts that are really popular now that you can follow on YouTube or you can find on the internet. What's your opinion about that? Do you need to do 30 minutes of rigorous cardio every day? And I think it's a twice a week resistance training.
Yeah, well, it's a spectrum. The more you do, the more you improve and the better you feel. So what matters most to me is the consistency, not necessarily the duration. Just do a little bit every day, or every other day, whether it's meditation, whether it's exercise, whatever it is. Do a little resistance training is good. You can do slow, gentle exercise, go for a long walk. That gives you most of the benefits. Or you can do more intensive exercise for shorter periods of time, the high intensity exercise. If you're going to do that, and especially if you're older and you may have an underlying health condition, make sure your doctor says it's okay for you to do that. But, if you're really stretched for time and you can, go on on your treadmill, just run really fast for 10 minutes once you do the warm up and cool down, or swim laps really fast or whatever, you can get a lot done in just 10 minutes or so. It doesn't really take that much time.
Yeah, the final thing I want to ask you about before I bring on Bridget and Carla is this whole notion of de-stressing. You've talked about meditating. You've talked about, the study that showed that women who, meditated or had less stress in their lives, had healthier outcomes. But all of us, from, just the external factors, now COVID-19, we've been in the house, we've been locked away from family and friends. There's financial woes, there's inflation. How do you live a stress-free life? Or maybe that's not even the goal.
Yeah, well, the stress comes not so much from what we do, but how we react to what we do. And how we react is really a function of how we view the world. And really what it comes down to, first of all, if you just meditate, if you get up 10 minutes early and meditate for 10 minutes, you'll get the same amount of rest. But people say things like, I used to have a short fuse and I'd explode easily. And now my fuse is longer. In other words, I'm still in the same job, the same family, the same environment, but things just don't bother me as much. We've all had the opposite experience when you're tired and run down, and even the little day-to-day aggravations, waiting for an elevator or whatever, can really stress you out. The opposite happens when you meditate regularly. And also, even if you just meditate for 10 minutes in the morning, it carries with you throughout the day. Have you ever listened to a song on the radio and found yourself humming it later in the day? It's the same idea, that subconsciously your mind is still doing that. But on a deeper level, we're taught, from the time we're born, and the whole advertising industry supports this idea, this idea, that we get our happiness, we get our health, we get our well-being from outside ourselves. And then once you set up that view of the world, however it turns out, you're going to feel stressed. Because if you say, if only I had more, whatever, more money, more power, more beauty, more sex, more accomplishment, whatever, then I'd be happy. Then I wouldn't be so lonely. Then people would love me. Then everything would be great. Now, once you set up that view of the world, however it turns out, you're generally going to feel stressed, because until you get it, you're going to feel stressed. Right. We talked earlier about the stress isn't just from what you do, but how you react to what you do. And if you think that your sense of well-being and lovability and respect and all that is contingent on you're getting whatever or doing whatever you think you have to do, the stresses go way up. So if you don't get it, you feel stressed. If someone else gets it and you don't, then you feel really stressed. And it makes you feel like we live in this very hostile zero-sum game, dog-eat-dog world. The more you get, the less there is for me, and you better get it while you can and all that. But even if you get it, it's seductive in the moment. It's like, now I got it. Now I'm happy. Now I'm not stressed anymore. But it doesn't last in most cases. It's like, now what? It's never enough. How many times do you think, gosh, if I just made $10,000 a year, that would do it, and then, well, maybe 20,000, it just, the goalposts keep moving. Or a patient once said, I can't even enjoy the view from the mountain I've climbed. I'm already looking over the next one. Or if it's not now what, it's often so what. It doesn't really provide that lasting sense of meaning. And so we say, well, that didn't do it. Maybe I'll make sure I've got a dozen projects going at the same time so I can immediately shift my focus elsewhere. But, meditation and things like that weren't developed by the ancient swamis and rabbis and priests and monks and nuns and mullahs and so on to unclog your arteries or do better in sports or get your blood pressure down. It can do all those things. What they're really designed to do is to quiet down our mind and body to experience more of an inner sense of peace and joy and well-being, and to realize that that's really our natural state most of the time, is to be healthy and happy until we disturb it. And in one of the ultimate ironies of life, not really realizing that, we end up running after all these things. If only I had this or that, And in the process, we disturb what we could have already if we just stop doing that. And so that may sound like just, parsing words and splitting hairs, but the implications are profound, because if it's out there, if you have something that I think I need to be happy and healthy and lovable, then you have power over me. But if the question shifts from not how can I get what I think I need to be happy and healthy to how can I stop disturbing what I've already got, that's very empowering, not to blame myself, but to empower, because I can do something about that. And then I can say, oh, let me, when I'm at the end of a meditation and feeling more peaceful, let me remind myself that the meditation didn't bring that peace to me. It was already there. At least temporarily, I stopped disturbing what was there already.
No, that's a really profound way to think about, yes, how most of us live, and we've been trained to live, which is searching for those external factors to make us happy and constantly on this treadmill getting more. Like I said, whether it's more money, more prestige, more status. And then when we get it, moving the goalpost to wanting even more, even after we've achieved it. So, and not recognizing that we already have everything we need internally. This book also talks a lot about love and the importance of connections and loving more.
Yeah, people
How do we
say
do that in a world where we seem to be so polarized and so at each other's throats, and there's so much vitriol, seemingly, again, we turn on television, turn on our phone, anything. So how do we get more love in our lives?
well, to me, that's the most important question. And one of the reasons why I love doing this work is that, change is hard in any field, whether it's your diet or whether it's your love or anything. But if you're hurting enough, then the idea of change becomes more appealing. It's kind of like, wow, that's kind of a big thing, but boy, I'm hurting so bad. Let me try this weird stuff. And again, that's part of the value of the science, is to give permission for people to try things that they might do otherwise. In our studies, Medicare is now covering my program. And just in November, they're now covering it when it's done virtually. So we can do this in people's homes. Again, if people go to the ornish.com site, if they've got heart disease, Medicare will pay for this. And part of our program is support groups. But the support groups are not just to help people stay on the diet. It's a powerful intervention in its own right. And we create a safe environment where people can open their hearts and let down their emotional defenses and learn to love each other and love other people more, by just talking authentically about what's really going on in their lives. That we mentioned James Cameron and Avatar earlier. There's that great scene like, I see you, I see all of you, not just your Facebook profile, and those nice things you said about me at the beginning, but I see all of you. And 50 years ago, people had an extended family they saw regularly on many occasions, or they had a neighborhood with 2 or 3 generations of people that grew up together. They really knew each other. They had a church or a synagogue or a mosque or a club or something they went to on a regular basis. They had a job that they went to in, offices, and they were, stable for 10 years or more. They really got to know their coworkers. And in all those situations, people really know you. They don't just know your good stuff. They know where you got busted or you got, depressed or whatever it was. And that they know, and they know that that they know, and they're still there for you. And there's just something really primal about being, seen fully, warts and all. One of the studies that my wife and I cite in our new Undo It book is that the more time you spend on Facebook, the more depressed you are. Because it's not an authentic intimacy. An authentic intimacy, they know you, all of you, warts and all. In Facebook, people don't post their demons and their dark stuff. And, it's like, here's my perfect life. Here I am in front of the Eiffel Tower.
Because of COVID and people are so isolated, you can't have big parties, you can't have family gatherings without, risk of having a super spreader event. Is Facebook and social media sites like that, I guess your study shows they're not filling the void that we're missing because of COVID.
But what is filling the void is just reaching out and touching somebody. It can be done by Zoom. There was a study that Sheldon Cohen did in the Journal of the American Medical Association. I don't know how he got this through the Human Studies Committee, but he got permission to drip rhinovirus, the virus that causes the common cold, and another variant of a coronavirus that wasn't as bad as the one that's causing the pandemic now, into volunteers' noses. And 100% of them got infected, but not everyone who got infected got sick. And they found that those that had 6 or more phone calls or visits from a friend over a 2-week period compared to those that had fewer than 2 were 4 times less likely to actually get sick, even though all of them were infected. So yes, with the social isolation, it can make it worse, but it doesn't have to be an in-person visit. Just knowing that somebody cares about you, that they send you an email or send you, better yet, something in real time where you can talk to them, on the phone or a Zoom call or anything, just letting people know that you love and care for them. On the other hand, the one emotion that has consistently been shown to be the most toxic is chronic anger. When you point your finger at someone, there are 3 fingers pointing back at you. There was a study that was looked at 148 million Twitter feeds. And those that had the most anger were much more likely to get heart disease and diabetes and prostate and breast and colon cancer, even than smoking or, lack of exercise or the usual kind of risk factors. Yeah. So one thing that, Aldous Huxley wrote a book called The Perennial Philosophy that looked at what are all these different spiritual paths and religions, what do they have in common? They all fight them like, no, my God is right. No, my God is right. I'm going to kill you with my God of love or whatever, but what they have in common once you get past the rituals that people fight over is altruism, love, compassion, forgiveness. When Nelson Mandela was released from prison, he did his long walk to freedom. He was asked, do you hate your jailers? He said, well, they took away the best years of my life. I didn't get to see my family, I didn't watch my kids grow up. But, if I hate them, then I'm still in prison in my heart. Right. And so what we try to teach people is that love is more powerful than fear. The light drives out the darkness. And when, I think now more than ever, our country we need to find what brings us together. Anything that brings us together is healing. Even the word healing comes from the root to make whole. Yoga is from the Sanskrit to yoke, to unite, to bring together. We need to find love and compassion as a way of really healing ourselves and healing our nation and healing our planet.
No, absolutely 100% agree with you, Dr. Ornish. And speaking of healing, I want to bring on now Carla and Bridget. These are two women, both who've had some health challenges. Carla has hyperthyroidism, and she says she's gained a lot of weight during COVID. And Bridget is a breast cancer survivor. Good morning, Bridget. Good morning, Carla.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So let's talk to you, Bridget. First of all, thank you for joining. Thank you for being willing to share your story of surviving breast cancer. Can you just tell us just briefly kind of where you are on that journey?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I've gotten so much out of today's program, but I am really grateful to say that I am a 6-year survivor. And I don't know how much I should share in terms of my journey, or would you like
for you? Like, have you been able to do any of the things that Dr. Ornish talked about in terms of lifestyle changes? And did you think it made a difference in terms of your healing?
Yeah, I would say while I was actually going through my treatment, I saw a nutritionist. I did restorative yoga. I made sure I got outside, and I had an amazing circle of friends and family that just checked on me and helped me. And I think all of that just made a difference. My cancer was not easy to find. It wasn't in my mammogram. And so I went through my journey also just with gratitude that it was found, and it was found early, and I knew I would have a good outcome. So during my journey, I think I was like a model, as a model patient or what have you. I would say, quite honestly, what I've struggled with most post my journey has just been being consistent. So the things that I really like, I love going outside. I'm really deliberate and intentional with the friends that I have and my family and spending time. And I think all of those things have been really amazing. I love exercising, fortunately for me. And so I'm really good about that. But the food and my diet I'm a yo-yo. So I've been good and really good at times. And then I've been out, quite honestly, the last 6 to 9 months of COVID, I've been a bit off the rails. And so just really finding the wherewithal to stay really consistent is probably the thing I struggle with the most.
Yeah. You're not alone with that. And I'll let you respond, Dr. Ornish. But first, I want to get Carla in. Carla, tell us what's going on with you, and then we'll have Dr. Ornish respond.
So what's been going on is obviously I have hypothyroidism. On top of that, I have depression. And then about 4 years ago, I changed careers from education to mental health. So I think I've been swallowing a lot of this mental health, from my clients. And I just feel like I'm not myself. I don't enjoy going out. I don't enjoy my friends. Of course, COVID has made everything so much complicated that we have, thanks to Areva, I have a very large circle of super moms that I surround myself with. But to be honest with you, ever since COVID, I completely removed myself because I have a child with special needs. And, he doesn't have autism, but he has cerebral palsy and he's 21. So I'm very cautious of what I do, I don't do. So my stress level is very high. I carry a lot of loads on top of me. Whatever my clients are going through, I swallow it in, and I try not to complain about myself or my things, because I see that they have it a lot harder than I do.
Yeah. And Carl, you said you gained a lot of weight during COVID, which is so many of us have. I think I've gained and lost the same 10 pounds like every 3 months, Dr. Ornish. I keep gaining it and losing it, gaining it and losing it. So you listened to Carla. So sorry to hear, Carla, what you've been going through. And Bridget, Dr. Ornish, what do you have to say to these ladies? I mean, very relatable stories. We
Sure.
know Black and brown women in particular are at higher risk for so many chronic diseases, whether it's breast cancer or heart disease or diabetes. You know, we fall into that high risk category for so many of those diseases. Yet we also, unfortunately, we die at greater rates from those diseases than, you know, non-African American and non-Latinx people as well, which is also really scary.
Well, it's true, and I so appreciate your sharing your stories with me. So, so Carla, let me ask you a question. So, you know, your heart pumps blood to the body, right? Which organ does it pump blood to first? Just guess.
My brain?
That's what most people would think. It actually pumps blood to itself first through the coronary arteries, so that it can then pump blood to the rest of the body. But if those arteries get clogged and the heart can't feed itself, what happens to the rest of the body? It dies, right?
Right.
And so is it a selfish act that the heart pumps blood to itself first?
No.
No, because otherwise everything dies, right? So what I want you to think about is to, you know, you talked about how you hear everyone else's stories and you kind of stuff a lot of stuff in, literally and figuratively, is to see that taking care of yourself is really the most unselfish thing that you can do. Your son needs you, for example. You know, the people that you work with need you. And if you can reframe it that way, that'll give yourself permission to do all the things that you already know how to do, but you just don't make time for because you think that, you know, you're not, you know, the high enough priority to do that. And really, it's the number one thing that you need to do so that you can help other people and do that. Now, the other thing I was wondering is, you know, I was suicidally depressed when I was in college and came about as close to committing suicide as one can. That was my doorway into learning about all these different things. And so I know, and the worst thing about being depressed is that it's a reality distortion. You really think you're seeing things clearly, what you're not. You know, you think things are bad, they'll always be bad. And anytime you thought they'd be better, you were just fooling yourself. You know, that's where the hallmark of depression, that sense of helplessness and hopelessness come from, is that reality distortion, that things are bad, they'll always be bad, they've always been bad. And they're not, you know, that it's just things get better. Are you taking Synthroid or any medication for your hypothyroidism?
Yes, Levothroid.
Okay, good. So and make sure you get enough of that because, you know, when you're hypothyroid, that also makes you gain weight faster as well, and also makes you depressed, independent of any, just physiologically. So you want to make sure that you're getting enough of the medication to keep your thyroid level back in the normal range. Okay, good. But not just enough different types of medicine, but you make the dose, that work closely with your doctor to make sure that you're titrating just the right dose, you know, like the 3 bears, not too much and not too little, but just right. And the other thing that I've learned is that it's not enough just to focus on behaviors. You know, we have to focus on the deeper issues. And if you're feeling, you know, like so many people, lonely and isolated and even depressed because of COVID, you know, it's not like I'd say, hey, I want you to quit smoking. It's bad for you. Go, well, I didn't know that. I'll quit today. It's like everybody knows it's bad for you. It's on every pack of cigarettes. So information is important, but it's not usually sufficient. And it's not enough to just focus on the behaviors. So I'd ask people in our studies, like, you know, teach me something. Like, why do you smoke and why do you overeat and drink too much and abuse opioids and work too hard and, you know, play so many video games and whatever? These behaviors seem so maladaptive to me. And they just look at me, they go, they're not maladaptive. You don't get it. You don't have a clue, Dean. These behaviors are very adaptive. They help us deal with our loneliness, our pain, our depression. I've had patients say, I've got 20 friends in this pack of cigarettes and they're always there for me and nobody else is. You're going to take away my 20 friends? What are you going to give me? Or, you know, food fills the void, or I stuff my feelings with food, or fat coats my nerves and numbs the pain, or alcohol numbs the pain, or, you know, opioids numb the pain. We have an opioid crisis, you know, or video games distract me from the pain, or working all the time is a more socially acceptable way of numbing myself from pain. And so if we can focus on the deeper issues, the social isolation, and I know that you've kind of, you have the support of super moms, but you've kind of pulled back from them. Now is the time to actually reach out to them. And even if you don't do it in person, do it by Zoom or a phone call or things like that. And Bridget, it sounds like you did all the right things. And I think you look like you're glowing as a healthy person. It's hard to kind of stay with that. But if you can imbue those choices with meaning and say, like, why do I want to stay healthy? I want to watch my kids grow up, or my husband or my wife or my kid, whatever it is that you find brings meaning into your life. If you can imbue your choices with meaning, that also makes them much more sustainable. So, and just be compassionate with yourself. If you indulge yourself one day, the whole language of behavioral change has this kind of fascist finger wagging, Nurse Ratched quality to it. Even the language, I cheated on my diet. And once you call foods good or bad, it's a small step to saying I'm a bad person because I eat bad food, and might as well just finish the cheeseburger at that point because you're a bad person, right? So just, allow yourself some indulgences and have compassion for yourself, just like you want to have for other people. The more you can love and forgive and have compassion for yourself, the more you can love and forgive and compassion for other people. And God knows at this time when our country is so polarized, what we need more than anything is to find common ground. And one of the best ways to do that is to find that compassion in our hearts.
Dr. Ornish, the condition that Carla has, can it be reversed, hyperthyroidism, with major lifestyle changes? Can she reverse that altogether and not need the medication that you guys just talked about?
I wouldn't say that. I don't know that. I haven't studied that. And so I'm really careful to only talk about what we've proven.
Okay.
But for example, there are some people who say that there's a yoga pose called a shoulder stand. And even if you don't feel like you're flexible enough to do it by yourself, just, even lying on the floor and just putting your legs up on a chair, that anything that kind of brings more blood to your thyroid, there's some people who say may make a difference. But in the short run, what matters most is for you to make sure that you're on the right dose of the medication.
And Dr. Ornish, we hear a lot about accountability partners. Do you think have you done any research that shows that people like Bridget, like me, like so many people, Americans, that we would stay more accountable to an exercise and diet routine if we worked with a person either one-on-one or in a group?
Absolutely. And just, first of all, it's not just accountability, it's just the fun. It's more fun to do things, especially during times of COVID. You can go outside and exercise. You don't generally need to wear masks if you're outside and you're not around a lot of people. So you can go for a walk together. Walking gives you most of the health benefits of more intensive exercise, but it's easy to do. So, but even more than the exercise itself is the social support that comes from doing something together. I'll do things for my kids that I would never do if it were just for me. Most parents would jump in front of a train, and if they had to push their kid out of a path of incoming train and they know they get hit, they do it in a heartbeat. I know I would. I'm sure you would as well. So we'll do things, if I tell myself like, oh, I don't really feel like, swimming this morning, but I thought, well, I got this beautiful 12-year-old girl and this 21-year-old son, and I want to, I'm 68 now. I got started later in life. I really want to watch them grow up. I want to be there for them. If I really put it into that context of not just about me, but about them, it actually motivates me to do what I wouldn't do necessarily.
Yeah. And just finally, Dr. Ornish, you're right. The way we think about diet and exercise in this country is so punitive when we don't do something that we should do or think we should do. There's punishment versus this positive support, which you're thinking, okay, if I don't go swimming, maybe I won't see my daughter. I want to see my daughter, so I'm going to go swimming. How do we make that shift, that paradigm shift in the way we think about our health and our wellness?
Well, I think that's the function of pain. It's to get our attention. It's to say, hey, listen up, pay attention. You're not doing something that's in your best interest. The other thing that I found that's really powerful is at the end of a meditation, when my mind is more quiet, is I can, we all have a still small voice within, a teacher within, whatever name you want to give to that. And it speaks very clearly, but very quietly. It's the one that wakes me up at 3 a.m. and says, hey, Dean, listen up, pay attention. You're forgetting something that's really important. But I've learned that we can access that more intentionally. So at the end of a meditation, when my mind is more quiet, I'll say hello, and it'll say hello. And then I'll say, teach me something. What am I not paying attention to that I need to pay attention to? And I'll listen, and it'll tell me. And I would urge all of you to try that. I mean, yes, it'll also talk about, you need to exercise more, or you need to do this or do that. but often it'll give me something that's really creative that I hadn't thought about. In fact, all of the studies we've done over the years, people thought were impossible at the time. The ideas for doing them really came from listening to that little voice within. And it's one of the most powerful practices that I've found. And we all have that. And if you pay attention to it, when your mind is more quiet, at the end of a prayer, or if you're secular at the end of a meditation, you can access that voice and it will guide you and teach you what you really need to know at that moment.
Any last minute question, Carl or Bridget, for the doctor before we let him go?
I have one quick one, but it may be long. Just around anxiety, for those of us that also suffer from anxiety, just
what can you do?
Yeah.
Well, here again, the meditation I find to be enormously helpful. My basically underlying personality is anxious. When I was so depressed, I was so anxious, I literally couldn't sit still. I mean, I was doing walking meditations because I couldn't sit still long enough to do a regular meditation. So I would encourage you, even a few minutes a day can make a big difference. And it gives you the sense, one of the things about anxiety is you feel like you don't really have control over anything, but you do, because again, the stress comes not just from what's happening to you, but how you react to it. And just meditating a few minutes a day gives you a powerful tool that not only will make your fuse longer, but it will give you a sense of control. And having that sense of control is a real antidote to feeling anxious.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ornish. Great advice. Again, his book is Undo It, How Simple Lifestyle Changes Can Reverse Most Chronic Diseases. The book hit the bookshelves this January. It's available everywhere books are sold. Make sure you check it out. Book can change your life, whether it's a small change like less fish every week or a dramatic lifestyle change. You definitely can have the life that you want and you're in control of it, which I think is the most important message that I'm gleaning from your talk this morning, Dr. Ornish, is that we don't have to rely on, this happened to our mother or our father or our brother or our sister. We have complete control over how we live our lives, and small changes are big changes.
Well, to me, awareness is the first step in healing. So I'm grateful to all of you for the opportunity to share this information. And I hope at least part of it's been useful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Bridget, so much for joining us this morning. Wow. Thanks again to all of my guests, and thanks to you who joined in. If you have questions or comments, continue to post them. We're going to continue to respond to those questions. Just really want to say what an inspiring and empowering morning, getting to talk with one of the nation's leading wellness doctors, a doctor who says it's not just about medicine, but the changes that we can make ourselves. And I think whenever we know that we're in control of our own lives, it's just so empowering. We can go to the doctor, and yes, we all should be going to the doctors. We all should be getting checkups. Dr. Ornish didn't say, throw away your medication if you're on high blood pressure medication or diabetes. Of course, talk to your doctors. But start thinking about those things that you can do, those lifestyle changes that you can make in conjunction with the medication that you may be taking. And if you make those changes, maybe over time you won't have to take that medication, or at least as much of that medication, which is always great. And make sure you get that book. It's such an important book. Get the book. We want you to be happy. We want you to be healthy in 2022. I'll write some words to live by before I get out. Just simple. Our health is our wealth. You've heard it before. Yes, our health is our wealth. And you determine, yes, you get to determine how rich you want to be by how you treat your body. I'm out, y'all. Wear your mask, get your booster, and remember, we're all in this together.